Hello, my amazing friends. Today, we're not just telling a story. We're diving into a real-life war that shook the world, not on the battlefield, but inside a family. This is a story about two brothers, not just any brothers. These two created two of the most powerful sports brands in history. One gave you Adidas, the other gave you Puma. But behind those brands was a family torn apart by ego, pride, betrayal, and silence that lasted a lifetime. In this video, you won't just learn a story. You'll learn about family and business, loyalty and competition, success and regret. And most importantly, you'll practice your English listening while enjoying every second of this journey. Because I'll tell it in simple, clear English, just like a movie. So you can improve your English and learn something powerful about life and business at the same time. This story is not fiction. It's 100% real. And it will change the way you look at family, success, and even your favorite shoes. So grab your earphones, open your heart, and get ready. Because this is the Billion-Dollar Family War. The true story of Adidas versus Puma. Let's begin with Part 1. The Brothers Who Built a Dream. Part 1. The Brothers Who Built a Dream. 1898 to 1924. Let's go back more than 120 years. To a small town in Germany called Herzogenaurach. This was a quiet, peaceful place, surrounded by fields, factories, and families who worked hard to survive. In this small town lived the Dassler family. They weren't rich. They didn't own land or businesses. They were just ordinary people trying to make it through life. But among them were two young boys. One named Adolf, born in 1900, and the other Rudolf, born in 1898. Their friends called Adolf by a short name, Adi, and that little nickname would one day become a part of every shoe store in the world. Adi Dassler was quiet, introverted, and loved working with his hands. He wasn't very interested in school, but he was obsessed with one thing: shoes. He would often take old shoes, open them up, and study the stitching, the sole, the fabric. He wanted to understand how they were made and how to make them better. His older brother, Rudolf Dassler, was the exact opposite. Rudolf was loud, confident, a born salesman. He loved talking to people, making deals, and dreaming big. He didn't care about stitching or laces. He cared about money, branding, and power. So from the beginning, they were different. But together, they were about to build something incredible. After World War I ended, Germany was in economic collapse. Jobs were gone, food was expensive, and hope was fading. But Adi, now in his early 20s, decided to start making shoes in his mother's laundry room. Yes, a laundry room. He didn't have machines. He didn't have money. Just a sewing machine, some leather, and a dream. He would work all day and all night, cutting, sewing, adjusting. By 1924, his brother Rudolf joined him. Together, they started the Gebrüder Dassler Schuhfabrik, which means Dassler Brothers Shoe Factory. They had no money, but they had passion. Adi designed the shoes. Rudolf sold them, and it worked. At that time, athletes were starting to get attention in Europe. Track and field events, Olympic Games, and football were becoming more popular. Adi believed that athletes needed better shoes, lighter, faster, stronger. So he began creating shoes specifically for athletes. And here's where things started changing. In 1928, German athletes wore Dassler shoes at the Olympics. But the real breakthrough came in 1936. Germany, 1936. The entire world was watching the Berlin Olympics. But this wasn't just any Olympic Games. It was controlled by Adolf Hitler, and he wanted to use it to show the world the power of Nazi Germany and Aryan superiority. The stadium was full. The Nazi flags were flying. The German crowd was ready to cheer for their athletes. But something else was about to happen. Something that would shake the entire world, and also shake the Dassler family forever. In the middle of this political chaos arrived Jesse Owens, a young African-American sprinter from the United States. He wasn't welcome in Nazi Germany. Hitler didn't believe a black man could be better than his German athletes. The pressure was massive. But guess what? Adi Dassler saw potential, not politics. He quietly visited Jesse Owens in the Olympic Village. Think about that. A German shoemaker in Nazi Germany, secretly walking into a black American athlete's room to offer him a pair of handmade shoes. At a time when people could be punished for supporting non-Aryans. But Adi believed in performance over politics. He handed Jesse Owens a pair of his best track shoes, made specially with lightweight materials and long metal spikes to give better grip. And Jesse said yes. On the track, Jesse Owens made history. He won 4 gold medals, 100 meters, 200 meters, long jump, and 4 by 100-meter relay. The stadium was silent. Hitler was humiliated, but the world was amazed. And guess what shoes Jesse was wearing? Dassler shoes. This moment turned the Dassler brothers' business from a local German company into an international sensation. After the 1936 Olympics, Dassler shoes became known across Europe and even in America. Orders began pouring in. From just a few dozen shoes a week, they were now receiving thousands of orders from all over the world. By the late 1930s, they were producing over 200,000 pairs of shoes every year. They were no longer a small factory. They were a sports empire in the making. But with success came tension. Even though the business was booming, things inside the Dassler family were starting to fall apart. Rudolf, the older brother, believed he was being pushed aside. He thought Adi was getting all the attention, especially after the Jesse Owens victory. Adi was focused on athletes and innovation. Rudolf was focused on sales and expansion, and both of them started believing that the other was trying to take control. Worse, their wives didn't get along. They lived in the same house, but each family occupied a separate floor. The tension wasn't just in business, it was in their home, every day. They started arguing more, about decisions, about money, about who deserved credit. Even small things became big fights. The Dassler factory, once built on teamwork, was now filled with suspicion. And then came World War II. When World War II began, everything changed. The German economy collapsed again. Factories were taken over by the military. Men were being sent to fight. The Dassler factory was forced to start making military equipment, including army boots and weapons parts, instead of sports shoes. Adi stayed behind to run the factory and try to protect it. Rudolf was drafted into the German army and sent to fight. This made Rudolf furious. He believed Adi used his influence to stay safe at home, while Rudolf risked his life on the battlefield. Letters between them stopped. Trust disappeared completely, and something even darker happened. In 1945, when Nazi Germany began to collapse and the Allied forces entered German towns, they started arresting anyone suspected of being a Nazi supporter. Rudolph was captured and interrogated by American soldiers. But here's the shocking part. Rudolph believed that Adi had reported him to the Americans to get rid of him and take full control of the business. There is no full proof that Adi actually did it. But Rudolph was 100% sure, and he never forgave him. He was eventually released, but by then it was over. Their bond as brothers completely destroyed. Their company torn in two. After the war, the Dassler brothers could no longer work together. They divided the factory. Adi stayed on one side and took his half of the workers. Rudolph took the other half. The people of Herzogenaurach, their small town, were now split too. Families had to choose sides. Even the town's football teams began wearing different shoes. One side wore Adi's brand, the other wore Rudolph's. The brothers built two separate entrances to the same factory building. They stopped talking completely, not a word, for the rest of their lives. And then they created two new companies. Part 2. The Rise of Adidas and Puma. How a family fight became a billion-dollar war, 1948 to 1960s. Two brothers, one town, one family torn apart. And now, two brands were born from that pain. Adi Dassler created Adidas. Rudolf Dassler created Puma. But this wasn't just about shoes anymore. This was now war. Silent, personal, and very, very public. Let's go deeper into the world of rivalry, revenge, and rising empires. In most towns, neighbors talk to each other. Kids play together. People visit each other's homes. But in Herzogenaurach, everything changed after the factory split. The entire town took sides. If your family worked at Adidas, you didn't talk to those who worked at Puma. If you wore Puma shoes, you didn't marry someone who wore Adidas. Even butchers, bakers, and barbers chose sides. Locals started calling it the town of bent necks, because before people talked to you, they would look down at your shoes to check which brand you were wearing. This rivalry wasn't just business, it was personal. Let's talk about how the two brothers grew their companies so differently. Adi Dassler's Adidas. Adi focused on innovation. He created shoes that were lightweight, comfortable, and built for performance. He listened to athletes. He adjusted the design again and again to help them win. He wasn't chasing money. He was chasing excellence. And it worked. He registered the famous 3 stripes as Adidas's signature look. He believed, the stripes aren't just decoration. They make the shoe stronger. That design would later become one of the most recognized symbols in the world. Rudolf Dassler's Puma. Rudolf was aggressive, bold, and marketing-focused. He knew how to make deals, negotiate sponsorships, and push the brand into the spotlight. He believed that speed and strength were Puma's identity, and even chose the name Puma to reflect that. While Adi was in the workshop with shoes, Rudy was in offices, meetings, and sponsorship contracts. They both had different styles, but both were now playing on a global field. In the 1950s, Adidas made a major move that changed everything. Adi Dassler began working directly with Olympic athletes, helping them choose the right shoes, adjusting spikes for sprinters, and even customizing shoes for individual events. His most famous innovation? Removable spikes. This allowed sprinters to change the length of their spikes based on the weather and the track. At the 1952 Helsinki Olympics, Adidas shoes helped athletes win gold medals, and Adidas became the official choice of many national teams. This was a huge blow for Puma. Rudolf realized that Adidas was becoming the official shoe of champions, and he couldn't let that happen. So what did he do? He went after football. Rudolf Dassler knew that football, soccer, was the most popular sport in Europe. So he started sponsoring local football teams with free Puma shoes. He sent brand new Puma boots to clubs in Germany, Italy, France, and even Brazil. And in 1958, Puma did something clever. They gave their football boots to a young Brazilian team that no one had heard of. That team went on to win the World Cup. That team's name? Brazil. And their star player? A teenager named Pelé. Now this is where the story gets even more dramatic. By the 1960s, Pelé had become the most famous footballer in the world. Both Adidas and Puma wanted him badly. But their rivalry had become so toxic, so expensive, that both companies agreed on something shocking. They made a secret Pelé pact. It said, neither Adidas nor Puma will sign Pelé. He is too expensive. This fight must stop. Both brothers agreed to stay away from Pelé, but Rudolf Dassler couldn't resist. Just before the 1970 World Cup final, Puma made a move behind Adidas's back. They paid Pelé $120,000, around $1 million today, to wear Puma shoes. But here's the genius part. Before the game started, as the world was watching on TV, Pelé walked to the center of the field, bent down in front of the cameras, and tied his Puma laces slowly, clearly, and confidently. It was like a global advertisement in real time. And Adidas was furious. Puma had broken the pact and won the world's attention. After this move, Puma became a global force in football. Sales exploded, but Adidas wasn't falling behind. They continued dominating in track and field, tennis, and even basketball. By the late 1960s, Adidas was selling over $50 million worth of shoes every year, over $450 million in today's money. Puma was right behind, not as big, but growing fast, especially in South America and Europe. Their competition was so intense that both brands spied on each other's designs, copied each other's ideas, poached each other's athletes, and even sabotaged each other's events. This wasn't just business anymore. It was war disguised as branding. As the 1960s ended, both Adi and Rudolf were old men. They had built global empires. Their shoes were worn by Olympians, World Cup champions, NBA stars, and street kids everywhere. But they had one thing missing: peace. They never spoke again. Not a letter, not a handshake, not a word. They refused to attend each other's events. They avoided the same restaurants. They even refused to be buried together. Adi and Rudolf Dassler died as strangers, living just a few hundred meters apart. A family war that built two empires, but destroyed a brotherhood. The Dassler brothers were now gone. Adi Dassler died in 1978 at age 77. Rudolf Dassler died in 1974 at age 76. They were buried in the same cemetery, but on opposite sides, as far from each other as possible. Their war had ended, but their companies were just getting started. Because now, the fight wasn't about family anymore. It was about world domination. Adidas and Puma were no longer just sports brands. They were entering a new battlefield: music, fashion, youth, identity, power. Let's dive in. It's the early 1980s in New York City. Graffiti covers the subway. Boomboxes blast music on the streets. Young kids from the Bronx are creating something the world has never seen before. Hip-hop, rap, DJing, breakdancing, street culture. And what were they wearing? Adidas Superstars. These were simple black and white sneakers, originally made for basketball players in the 1970s. But now, they were on the feet of dancers, rappers, rebels, and artists. And then, something magical happened. In 1986, a rap group from Queens named Run DMC released a song called My Adidas. It wasn't just a song. It was a love letter to the brand. No laces, no flashy colors, just pure street power. The lyrics weren't about money or luxury. They were about identity, about walking through tough streets with pride, and Adidas on your feet. And Adidas noticed. They signed Run DMC to a $1 million deal, the first endorsement between a sportswear brand and a music artist in history. That deal changed everything. Now Adidas wasn't just for athletes. It was for anyone who wanted to feel bold, different, and powerful. Sales exploded in America. Suddenly, Adidas was everywhere. On stage, on the streets, in music videos, in schools, in protests. Adidas had become a symbol of rebellion and pride. And Puma? They were watching from the sidelines. And they knew they had to fight back. Puma couldn't match Adidas in music deals at first. But they played a different game. They started sponsoring the underground. In the early 1990s, Puma sneakers became a secret symbol among breakdancers, graffiti artists, skaters, and rebels who didn't want to follow the mainstream. They focused on sleek designs, bold colors, and affordable pricing, targeting kids who wanted something different from Nike and Adidas. Puma became the underdog brand, not as loud, not as global, but loyal, real, and respected. They slowly grew a cult following in the hip-hop and streetwear scenes, especially in Europe, South America, and Africa. While Puma worked the streets, Adidas continued to dominate the sports celebrity world. In the 1980s and 1990s, Adidas signed some of the biggest athletes of all time. Steffi Graf, the tennis legend, Zinedine Zidane, the French football king, and even Kobe Bryant in his early NBA days. Adidas shoes were now on Olympic tracks, football fields, NBA courts, tennis arenas, and they were also appearing in schools, fashion shows, red carpets, and nightclubs. Adidas was now a global lifestyle brand, worn by athletes and artists, celebrities and students, rich and poor. And Puma? They were about to make their biggest move yet. In the late 1990s, Puma was struggling financially. Their sales were dropping. They were behind Adidas, Nike, Reebok, and others. But then, a new CEO named Jochen Seitz took charge. He was only 30 years old, the youngest CEO in Germany at the time, and he had a bold idea. Let's stop trying to copy Adidas or Nike. Let's become the fashion-forward, street-style, lifestyle brand that everyone else is afraid to be. Under his leadership, Puma shifted direction. They hired fashion designers, artists, and even models to redesign their shoes. They made deals with Fenty by Rihanna, Alexander McQueen, and Jay-Z later on. Suddenly, Puma wasn't just back. They were cool, chic, and different. Now, the branding difference between Adidas and Puma became very clear. Adidas Puma. Clean, sporty, classic look, bold, edgy, street style. Focused on performance, focused on fashion and culture. Famous three stripes, iconic jumping Puma logo. Global athlete sponsorships, underground celebrity deals. Both were winning in different ways. But the old family war was now a global brand rivalry. Business numbers. Who was winning? By the end of the 1990s, Adidas was earning over $5 billion per year. Puma had crossed $1 billion per year, making a big comeback. Both brands had gone public. Adidas in 1995, Puma earlier, trading on international stock markets. But here's what was interesting. Adidas had become a giant. Puma had become a survivor. And both were still headquartered in the same small town in Germany, Herzogenaurach. Still separated, still bitter, still competing, even after the brothers had died. By the end of the 1990s, a new culture had formed. Streetwear. It wasn't just fashion. It was a movement, a mix of sports, music, skateboarding, politics, identity, and Adidas and Puma were at the heart of it. In cities like New York, Paris, London, and Tokyo, people were choosing sides. 3 stripes or a leaping cat, Adidas or Puma. Not because of family history, but because of what those brands represented. By the year 2000, Adidas and Puma had been at war for nearly 60 years. But the new millennium brought new rules, new players, and new weapons. This was no longer a simple competition between 2 German companies. It had become a global battle, against each other, and now also against a new king of the sneaker world, Nike. While Adidas and Puma were fighting each other, Nike had quietly built a giant empire in America. With deals like Michael Jordan and the Air Jordans, Tiger Woods in golf, LeBron James, Serena Williams, and more. Nike had something Adidas and Puma didn't yet have: a lifestyle attached to winning. They weren't just selling shoes. They were selling ambition, attitude, and American coolness. By 2000, Nike's revenue had already crossed $9 billion per year, while Adidas was earning around $5 billion per year. Puma was behind at $1.2 billion per year. So now Adidas and Puma had 2 options: keep fighting each other, or start reinventing themselves for a new generation. They chose both. Let's see how. In the early 2000s, Adidas made huge moves. They acquired Salomon, the ski and outdoor brand. That didn't work well, but it showed they were ready to expand. In 2005, Adidas made a shocking move. They bought Reebok for $3.8 billion. Why? To challenge Nike directly in the United States. Adidas already ruled Europe, but Reebok had a strong presence in American gyms, NBA, and fitness culture. Combining both was a bold step. It made Adidas the second largest sportswear brand in the world, right behind Nike. Now the war wasn't just Adidas versus Puma anymore. It was Adidas versus Puma versus Nike, a 3-headed beast. And Adidas wasn't done. They began signing younger athletes, investing in futuristic design labs, and launching new tech like Boost Foam, soft yet responsive running tech; Prime Knit material, light, breathable, no stitching; My Coach, wearable tech before it was cool. Adidas was now part sports brand, part tech company, part fashion label. But Puma wasn't staying quiet. Puma realized something clever. Nike and Adidas were both fighting for male athletes. So what if Puma focused on women? In 2014, they made a decision that changed their future. They signed Rihanna, not as just a brand ambassador, but as the creative director of Puma Women. Rihanna launched her own line of Puma sneakers, fashion-forward, bold, fearless, and it exploded. The shoes sold out in hours. Social media exploded with photos of girls rocking Fenty X Puma collections. Suddenly, Puma wasn't just the other brand. It was the cool, feminist, celebrity-driven fashion choice. Revenue shot up from $3.1 billion in 2014 to over $4.2 billion by 2016. Puma had officially staged a comeback, using music, fashion, and female empowerment. And Adidas saw it. and responded fast. After dominating sports and Olympic Games, Adidas now turned its full attention to culture. They signed Kanye West in 2013, who left Nike to launch his Yeezy line with Adidas. The Yeezy Boost 350, released in 2015, became an overnight success. People waited in line for days. Shoes sold out in minutes. Resale prices hit $1,500 plus for a single pair. This wasn't just hype, it was strategy. Adidas now had Kanye West, Pharrell Williams, Beyoncé, later with Ivy Park, James Harden, NBA, Paul Pogba, Lionel Messi, and Mo Salah, football. They weren't just sponsoring athletes. They were sponsoring culture shapers, and it worked. By 2015, Adidas's revenue crossed $17 billion per year. Puma was at $4 billion per year, growing steadily, but still behind. Before 2010, shoe companies had to use TV commercials, magazine ads, posters. But now, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, TikTok. And in this world, speed, storytelling, and relatability became everything. Adidas adapted faster. They launched bold campaigns like Here to Create, Impossible is Nothing, collaborations with top YouTubers and creators. Their visuals were clean. Their message was clear. Their shoes became fashion pieces, not just sportswear. Puma, meanwhile, focused on authenticity, showing behind-the-scenes, raw energy, and influencer deals in street-style communities. They weren't trying to look rich. They were trying to look real. And Gen Z, they noticed. Here's what started becoming obvious in the 2010s. Nike was the king of high performance and motivation. Adidas became the king of tech and culture. Puma became the king of attitude and everyday cool. The three giants were now playing different games with different messages. Brand focus, message, target audience. Nike motivation and winning just do it athletes, achievers. Adidas tech plus culture fusion. Impossible is nothing creators, dreamers. Puma fashion, rebellion, edge forever faster free spirits, trendsetters. Each had carved its own kingdom. But Adidas and Puma, they still carried the same blood. The war between two brothers, now hidden behind hashtags, logos, and product launches. In Herzogenaurach, the town where it all began, the factories still stood. The brands still worked across the street from each other. The two cemeteries still kept Adi and Rudolph apart. But something had changed. In 2009, something powerful happened. The employees of Adidas and Puma came together for the first time in over 60 years to play a friendly football match. No competition, no spying, no branding wars, just a ball, a field, and two companies born from the same house, finally sharing a moment of peace. It wasn't about shoes anymore. It was about healing. Part 3. Legacy, lessons, and the billion-dollar brands that grew from a family war, 2015 to today. The town of Herzogenaurach is still quiet. The same river flows through it. The same cobblestone streets are walked by new generations. And just across that river still stand two massive global companies, one with 3 stripes and the other with a leaping cat. But what happened after all the fame, the fashion, the billions, and the bloodline? Let's now explore how Adidas and Puma evolved into modern global forces, and what the world can learn from this painful, powerful, and unforgettable story of family, pride, and ambition. After the deaths of Adi and Rudolph, their children and grandchildren did not continue running the companies. That's right. The Dassler family no longer controls Adidas or Puma. Both companies went public. which means they are now controlled by shareholders, CEOs, and global investors, not family members. The businesses outgrew the blood, but their names still remain on records, museum walls, old factories, and of course, in the soul of the brands. Even now, the town of Herzogenaurach still feels that old, invisible tension. Two factories, two headquarters, two histories. But now, the next generation no longer carries hate. They carry business lessons, history, and a silent respect for what once was. Let's talk about what Adidas became in the last decade. After its bold moves in tech, fashion, and athlete endorsements, Adidas went beyond just sports. It became a statement. Revenue growth. In 2017, Adidas crossed $21 billion in annual revenue. In 2021, it hit nearly $23 billion. And their products are now sold in 190-plus countries. From the streets of Tokyo to the malls of Dubai. They operate 2,000-plus stores globally and employ over 59,000 people worldwide. But it's not just about money. Adidas has taken big steps into sustainability with their Parley Ocean plastic shoes, digital innovation, with sneaker NFTs, apps, and custom design tools, equality and activism, supporting Black Lives Matter, LGBTQ plus athletes, and mental health campaigns. They're not just a shoe company anymore. They're a culture company. Now let's talk about Puma. While Adidas roared loudly, Puma worked quietly, strategically, and relentlessly. And it paid off. Revenue growth. In 2010, Puma's revenue was around $3 billion per year. By 2022, it reached over $8.5 billion per year. Not bad for a company that was almost bankrupt in the 1990s. Today, Puma sells products in 120-plus countries, operates over 830 stores, and employs more than 18,000 people globally. But Puma's secret strength? Authenticity. They focused on collaborations with celebrities like Rihanna, The Weeknd, and Selena Gomez, sponsoring national football teams like Italy, Uruguay, and Switzerland, building strong streetwear lines for young audiences in urban cities. They didn't try to be Nike. They didn't try to copy Adidas. They became their own identity. Puma is now known as the brand for people who don't follow. They lead quietly. This is the question that everyone asks. Who won the war? Was it Adidas, the global giant with athletes, fashion, tech, and massive reach? Or was it Puma, the underdog who never gave up and found its own lane? Let's break it down honestly. Category Adidas Puma. Annual revenue $20 to $23 billion, $8 to $9 billion. Global reach 190-plus countries, 120-plus countries. Employees 59,000 plus 18,000 plus product categories: sports, streetwear, fashion sports, streetwear, fashion. Market position second largest after Nike, top 5 global sportswear. Cultural impact, massive, growing, strong brand identity, performance plus creativity, rebellion plus authenticity. So, the business winner? Adidas. But the real question is, was it worth it? Because even though Adidas became bigger, the family lost everything. 2 brothers became enemies. Their children lost their family business. Their town was divided for 60-plus years, and their names became symbols of pride and pain. So maybe there's no winner. Maybe the only winner was the lesson. This story is not just about shoes. It's about life, about how pride, ego, and silence can destroy everything. Think about it. What if Addie and Rudolph had talked? What if they forgave each other? What if their children grew up together instead of apart? We might have had a Dassler empire even bigger than Nike. We might have seen a brand that stood for family unity. But instead, we saw what happens when people choose ego over empathy. The lesson? Sometimes the biggest wars don't happen between countries. They happen inside families. And if we're not careful, we build empires, but lose ourselves in the process. In the cemetery of Herzogenaurach, there are two graves. One belongs to Adolf Adi Dassler. The other belongs to Rudolf Dassler. They are buried on opposite sides, as far apart as possible. They died without speaking again, without apologizing, without healing. But between those two graves stand $2 billion brands, born from one house, one bloodline, and one painful silence. It's tragic, but also beautiful. Because from that silence came something that reached the world. Go anywhere in the world, and you will see people wearing Adidas and Puma, in airports, in classrooms, on football fields, in music videos, on city streets, in the poorest villages and the richest neighborhoods. They're not just shoes anymore. They are symbols of work ethic, symbols of ambition, symbols of what happens when people dare to build something big, even while broken. You may not remember their names, but their story is on your feet. My friends, this was not just a business story. This was a story about brothers, about dreams, about pain, and about power. A story that teaches us, if you want to build something big, build it with your heart, not your hate. Adidas and Puma were born from rivalry, but may your dreams be born from passion, from purpose, and from peace. You just listened to a real story in clear, easy-to-understand English. You learned vocabulary, pronunciation, and storytelling style without any grammar books. And you'll remember it. Because when learning is emotional, it stays forever. So keep watching powerful stories like this. Because it's not just good for your heart, it's also great for your English learning journey. If this story touched you, if it inspired you, if it helped you learn, then please, like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share this story with someone who loves shoes, family, or history, because this is not just the story of Adidas and Puma. This is the story of what happens when we build with love, or lose everything to pride. Thank you for watching.